Love's Next Door, Chapter 7, Part 2. Where was I at? It was like old times. Okay. When they finished, the waiter returned and removed their plates. Justin leaned over and whispered something in the waiter's ear as he headed back to the kitchen. "How about opening your presents now?" he said, looking over at Lizzie for her approval. She nodded and passed her gift across the table to Stacy. "Thank you," she said, accepting the gift. The package had been elegantly packaged with patterned tissue paper, and Stacy began to carefully unwrap the gift. A small white box was exposed as she pulled away the last section of tissue paper. She raised the lid and cautiously lifted out an exquisite snow globe presenting a wintry outdoor scene with a man and woman skating hand in hand. "It's beautiful, Lizzie," she said, trying hard not to cry, all the while feeling her eyes fill with tears. Stacy had admired the snow globe in a store window while on a shopping spree several months ago when Lizzie had come to the city to visit. At the time, Stacy had felt homesick, and the picture, snowy setting, had reminded her of winter falls and watching her mother and father skating together on the frozen lake. Lizzie reached across the table and gently took the globe in her hands. "It plays music," she said as she turned it over and wound the music box. The classic Beatles tune, "Yesterday," tinkled magically. Lizzie placed the snow globe on the table, and Stacy watched as the figures appeared to float across the ice platform. The melody took her back in time. "Thank you, Lizzie, I love it," she said, her eyes still glistening with emotion. "Okay, enough of that," Justin said, nudging Stacy with his arm. "Open this one first," he said, placing a long gift-wrap box in front of her. Stacy tore the wrapping from the gift and lifted the top off the box. "You blockhead," she giggled as she lifted out a pair of glasses. She put them on and turned towards Justin. "What do you think?" she asked as the large, floppy, googly eyeball suspended from the glasses swayed from side to side. Lizzie lifted her camera and snapped another picture. "I think they suit you," she said, her face contorting with laughter. Too many hours in a book, and that's what you're going to look like." "Okay, one more," he said, pushing another package across the table towards Stacy. "This one is a wee bit more serious," he said. "Sure it is," she said, slowly picking up the package and holding it to her ear. "What are you doing?" Lizzie asked. "I'm just making sure it's not ticking," she said, as she tossed a grin at Justin. She tore the paper off the box and removed the lid. Nestled inside was a little blue tissue paper with a blue inside. Nestled within the blue tissue paper was a hand-carved wooden carousel horse. It had been hand-painted in soft colors of blue, pink, and yellow. Stacy threw her arms out around his neck and squeezed him tight, kissing him on each cheek. "I love it," she said, picking up the intricate and elegant wood carving. "Look, Lizzie, isn't it exquisite?" she said once again, brushing tears from her face. "Yes, it is," Lizzie answered, handing Stacy a tissue. Justin was elated to see that Stacy was genuinely pleased. He had hoped the carousel horse would be a welcome addition to her collection of handcrafted figures. Justin picked up the wooden horse and joked, "Somehow I figured it just wouldn't fit with my collection of rubber pizza slices and monographed polyester leisure suits." Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the waiter waving. "Oh, excuse me for a moment," he said as he rose from the table. Stacy couldn't help but follow his body with her eyes as he moved from the table, noting the way his T-shirt molded to the indentation along his ribs and clung to his athletic body. Shaking these thoughts from her mind, Stacy continued in this festive spirit and put her new glasses back on. "Well, kiddo, are you having a good time?" Lizzie asked as she admired the presents. "Yes," she said, moving her head from side to side, making the dangly eyeball swing back and forth. "That would so be something I would do, yeah." Stacy removed the glasses from her face and shoved them into her friend's nose. Both women laughed at the spectacle they were making of themselves. Justin began walking towards Stacy, carrying a cake from what looked to be 100 flaming candles. Stacy spotted his advance and covered her head with her hands, pretending to hide. This was what Stacy hated most about her birthday, being made a public spectacle. Justin started singing Happy Birthday and was joined by the restaurant staff and patrons. She looked at Lizzie, who was now singing and laughing with the rest of the crew. At the end of the song, Justin presented the cake to Stacy in ceremonial style and then placed the cake on the table directly in front of her. Hovering over her with a smile that was as bright as the cake itself, Justin said enthusiastically, "Make a wish, Stacy." Stacy closed her eyes and wished, a private wish that had something to do with the song yesterday. She took a long breath and blew the candles for all she was worth. The flames swayed but not one candle went out. She blew again and again. It took 5 tries before the last trick candle was finally extinguished. "Very funny, you two," she said, looking at her dinner companions, who were grinning from ear to ear, obviously altogether proud of themselves for having successfully embarrassed their friend. Stacy laughed as she watched Justin remove the candles from the cake and cut it into portions, placing a large piece in front of her. They enjoyed their cake, laughing, reminiscing, and lingering over cappuccinos. Lizzie was the first to announce her departure. "Well, guys, it's been fun, but it's time for me to head home." She really wanted to give Justin and Stacy a chance to be alone. She leaned over the table and kissed Stacy on the cheek. "Happy birthday. I'll give you a call tomorrow." "Thank you again for the gift. I really loved it." "You're very welcome, hon," she said, taking her coat from the hook by the booth. Justin stood and helped Lizzie into her coat. Lizzie appreciated the gesture. "Thanks, Justin, and as always, it's been great." She gave both Lizzie and Stacy a parting peck on the cheek, and then she was gone, leaving them with an awkward silence. Justin cleared his throat. Stacy shifted around in her seat and began toying with her gifts. "Well, I think maybe we should be going," he said, sliding off the bench and standing up. "Good idea." Stacy stood up, and Justin helped her in her coat. The fresh scent of her shoulder-length brown hair enveloped Justin, exciting his senses, sending a sudden thrill through his body. "I had a great time tonight," she said as they walked out the door and to his car. "The night's not over yet. I have one more surprise before you put those aging old bones to bed." Stacy wrinkled her nose at him. Laughing, he held the car door open for her. As they drove towards the house, Stacy fingered the gift sitting in her lap. "I want to thank you for all you've done tonight," she said. "You're welcome," he said, slightly distracted by what he thought he saw in the rearview mirror. Slowing his car ever so slightly, Justin checked his rear mirror again until he could see clearly into the car directly behind him. What he saw made his heart skip a beat. Cheryl was in the front seat, nuzzling up to the driver, a man Justin had never seen before. It was obvious Cheryl was preoccupied and was not aware she was being watched. Justin could feel his face flush with anger as he watched Cheryl lean over and kiss the driver just as they turned onto the street that led to her house. Stacy noticed something was wrong when she looked over at Justin. His hands on the steering wheel were tight, his knuckles turned white, and his jaw muscles were flexed and tense. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said, forcing a smile. Justin continued home and pulled into his driveway, but Stacy sensed the shift in his mood. "Justin, in case you've forgotten, I live on the next street," she said, giving him a perplexed look as she pointed in the direction of her house. "I know. Come on," he said, getting out of the car and slamming the door behind him. Stacy climbed out and followed him, not saying another word, as they walked towards the side of the house through the trees. A sign on the huge pine tree stopped her in her tracks. The large words read, "Follow the yellow brick road." She turned and looked at Justin, who appeared to be lost in thought. "Justin?" "Oh, sorry," he said quickly. "I just remembered something and my mind's wandering a bit." "What's the matter with you?" she asked with concern. "I'm fine," he said in a voice that was not very convincing. "Now come on and do what the sign says." He gently nudged her head and followed as she walked on the yellow confetti path that led from his property to her front yard. Stacy laughed as she followed the confetti trail that wound around in and out between trees. "This is absolutely enchanting, my very own yellow brick road." Then she rounded the corner to her house. She broke into laughter. Her yard was covered in pink plastic flamingos of all shapes and sizes, each holding a happy birthday sign in its beak. "Where in the world did you find those hideous things?" she said between giggles. "They flew in from Florida," he said, "and they have to stay where they are until all the neighbors have a chance to admire your good taste. Promise?" Stacy giggled at the sight of all the pink birds standing with one leg raised as if testing the snow, but finding it too cold for their liking. "You goof. I promise, but at 1 minute after 12 noon tomorrow, they're going to go migrate to your garage." "Well, I'll be checking," he said. "Listen, Stacy, I hate to leave at this touching moment, but there's something I have to do. Can I give you a call tomorrow? Will that be okay?" "Oh, sure," she said, hiding her feelings of disappointment. "Happy birthday." He leaned over and placed a brief kiss on her cheek. "I'll call you tomorrow," he promised. Then, with a wave, he headed back towards his home. "Thanks again," she called after him. Then he was gone, leaving Stacy standing in her front yard with all her winged friends. She grinned at the sight. Something was wrong with Justin. She couldn't put her finger on it, but something was definitely wrong. She gazed over her front yard once more and chuckled as she walked up the steps and into her house. Stacy closed the door to the cold night air and removed her coat and boots, suddenly remembering she'd forgotten her gifts in the car. She went to the phone and called Justin, hearing it ring several times before his answering machine picked up. The message she left ended with another gushing thank you for a terrific evening. She got ready for bed and practically dove under the covers. Heidi, her bed warmer, sauntered into the room and jumped up to cuddle. Stacy drifted off to sleep in a warm glow from the wonderful event. Stacy was troubled. It had been a week since her birthday party, and she hadn't heard from Justin. This wasn't like him, not returning her calls, not like him at all. Lizzie was coming for lunch. She placed a plate of sandwiches on their table and was reading around the refrigerator for pickles and olives when Lizzie flew in the door. "I'm here," Lizzie called from the foyer as she kicked off her boots. "Damn boots, damn snow, damn winter," she complained as she walked to the kitchen, adjusting her pantyhose. She threw her coat on a chair and ran her hands through her wind-tousled, straight, light brown hair. Stacy laughed as she placed a bowl of steaming soup in front of her friend. "This will warm you up." Lizzie inhaled the beefy aroma and looked at her friend. "This is homemade. You're an angel." She picked up her spoon and slurped her first taste. "Delicious," she said. Stacy carried another bowl of soup to the table and sat down. "It's taken me a while, but I finally got Mom's recipe down pat." "Girl, you do know how lucky you are," Lizzie asked between spoonfuls. "You get to play Little Susie Homemaker, and you don't have to get into a cold car in the morning. No pantyhose, no makeup. You've got it made." Stacy smiled. "I know. I'm very lucky, and believe it or not, I'm more productive working from home." Lizzie reached for a thick egg salad sandwich and changed the subject abruptly. "Has Justin reared his handsome head yet? I haven't heard a word from him, and I must admit, I walked past his house a couple times. He just seems to be hiding. When I took those ghastly pink birds back to his garage, I thought maybe he'd at least come out and give me a couple of verbal jabs, but he didn't. I tell you, Lizzie, it was strange how his mood suddenly changed the night of my birthday. He tried to cover something up, but he was very upset on the drive home. What do you think happened? We sure had a great time at the restaurant. Did you pounce on him after I left?" Lizzie chuckled as she went to the soup pot for a second helping. "No, Smarty, I didn't. At first I thought I said something, but we really talked very little on the way home that night." Lizzie dove into her soup and dabbed some beef broth from her chin. "Well, Super Sleuth had a tad of information for you. That's one advantage of going to the office. You hear stuff. One of the girls in my office and her husband live across the street from Justin, and they saw Cheryl hammering on his door. They knew he was home, but get this, he didn't answer." Stacy put her sandwich down. "So it does have something to do with Cheryl," she said. "Yep, looks like the romance is over. Something happened later the night of your birthday. Apparently they had a huge fight." Stacy was puzzled. "How could they? Cheryl was away at a conference." Lizzie shrugged her shoulders. "I don't know, but Justin's not talking, and apparently Cheryl is out and about on her own, and she's not talking either." Stacy threw her hands around her friend. "Lizzie, I'm so relieved to hear this. I honestly thought Justin was angry with me for some reason." "Well, I'm glad they broke up. He's far too nice a guy for her." "Poor Justin," Stacy said, her voice filled with sympathy. "Well, he'll surface when he wants, and maybe we'll know what happened." Secretly, Stacy wished Justin would come to her if he was in pain. They had always been there for each other in tough times. She wanted him to cry on her shoulder. Stacy sighed at the thought of as she brought 2 mugs of coffee to the table. "He needs his own space, so I'm not calling or going over to his place until I hear from him. But we should think of something to shake him out of his hibernation, cheer him up. Besides, he still has my birthday present," she laughed. Lizzie carried her dishes to the sink. "I know you'll think of something," she said, "and I know it won't be something as simple as sending him a bouquet of balloons." She pulled her coat tightly around her curvaceous body as she headed to the front door. "Duty calls. Thanks a million for lunch, Stacy." Lizzie walked to the front door and leaned against the wall as she pulled on her boots, cursing at them again. As she stood to leave, Stacy handed her a container of soup. "I made a huge pot, and if you don't take this, I'll be eating it for a week." "Well, there you go. Take some over to Justin. You know what they say, the way to a man's heart." "Goodbye, goof," Stacy laughed as Lizzie hurried down the steps. Stacy cleared away the table, all the while thinking about Justin. Maybe it's time. Maybe I should take him some soup, she thought. No, darn it, he hasn't answered my calls, and he owes me an explanation. I want to do something dramatic, something that will really shake him up. She turned on the radio, and suddenly a glimmer of an idea made her smile. She ran to the phone book, turned to the yellow pages, and found the number she was looking for. Dun dun dun! Tune in tomorrow for the beginning of Chapter 8.